With Oakland Latinos United, aka Oakland Latinos Unidos, on here with a new video for you guys to enjoy. Well, I'm on here with my series called Crime Stories Oakland. It's a new series I'm going to be doing from time to time. I did one about a month ago about a prison gang murder in East Oakland. You could look it up. It's Joey Dutra, I think was the name. Jesse Dutra was the guy who got killed in East Oakland in the 70s. And you could go back and look for that Oakland Crime Stories. But this is a new crime story about something that happened in 2004 that I will say is a day of infamy in the Raza community in Oakland, because a lot of people were murdered and a lot of crazy stuff happened at the time. And there is a video circulating out there about this incident, but I'm going to make my own version of it, and I'll leave links to the story and where I got this information from. And no, this is not stuff that nobody knows about or this secret. All this is public information. You can look it up and Google it. So let's start with the video. So what I want to talk about is a gang war that happened in September 14 of 2004 when the Border Brothers and the Sureños, or the SSLs and South Garden gang in Hayward, went to war with each other. Apparently what happened that day was there was a funeral, and there were both Sureños and Border Brothers having a funeral that same day. An altercation happened, and gunshots were fired, and fists were thrown in the air, and it caused a masked gang war in the streets where several people got killed. But before I go into what happened that day, a lot of people ask me, what are the Border Brothers? Why are they in Oakland? And I'll give a little history of them for those who don't know. The Border Brothers are a gang that originated in Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico, in the late 80s, I want to say, by a fellow named Sergio Gonzalez Martinez. And they made their way up to Oakland, to the Bay Area, and they started doing subsects on the streets. You know what I mean? But they were a prison gang made up of Mexicanos or Paisas or whatever you want to call them. You know what I mean? But the Border Brothers ended up having a big dominance in the city of Oakland, my hometown. And they started setting up shop in the Deep East, on 94th Ave, on 96th Ave, 98, 91st, 81st, 82nd. All those areas in the Deep became Border Brother territory. And at one point, there were even Border Brothers in Jingletown. And Fat Tone, who's someone that I actually knew, was affiliated with them and was one of the runners of drugs, or at least he supplied them with drugs, according to what I read about him. But, the Border Brothers basically started having dominance, like I said, in the Deep East. And they grew in numbers, and they were a force to be reckoned with. I would say they were the first gang to organize in Oakland that wasn't a Norteño affiliate gang. They started forming around 89, 90, 91. And eventually they would grow big, and they would have subsects in Oakland like VLB, Barrio Latino Brothers. And some of them were even in the Doves and in the 30s, which I know some of the homies might get mad at me, but it is true. There were a few of them here and there in those areas, which is considered Norteño areas. There was also DFL, Don't Fuck With Latinos. They were another subset of the Border Brothers. And the BBs claimed the number 22 for BB. You know what I mean? And they would get that tatted on them. And the BBs were a pretty big gang, and they were a force to be reckoned with. And they were dangerous guys. They murdered a lot of homeboys out in the streets. You know what I mean? And there was just this big war between them and the Norteños. And that all started in the early 90s, and it went on all the way into the 2000s. But in this incident, there was actually a war between Sureños and Border Brothers, which I didn't know at the time that these two gangs were warring. You know what I mean? And I was around Oakland a lot during this time. I used to hang out a lot on East 7th Street. I still used to hit up the sideshows with my homies from time to time. I was still younger then and dumb. But I'll tell you my kind of outlook on it and what was going on with my homies at the time. Well, let's go to the story. The other gang in question that was rivaling with the Border Brothers was the SSL, or Southside Locals. And they were, I want to say, maybe the first Sureño gang in Oakland. And they started, they were upstate Sureños, and they started around the area of 51st, 53rd, 57th, in that area, you know what I mean, near Seminary. That kind of was their stronghold. I don't think they were the biggest gang in Oakland. I think the Border Brothers and Norteños kind of outnumbered them. But I think they were affiliated possibly to the South Garden gang in Hayward. And yeah, man, it was a pretty crazy time. But the Sureños, or the Southside locals, were trying to make a name for themselves at the time. And, you know, like any gang, they're going to put in work, and they're going to go out looking for rivals and enemies. But basically, the story starts in September 14th of 2004, when there was a funeral in Hayward. And this is a graph of what happened that day. There was a funeral in Hayward, and the funeral was at 3:40, and it was at Scripture Cemetery, I believe, on Mission. And at that funeral, there was a funeral for Alfonso Ramirez and Ulises Pineda, who was a border brother. I believe Alfonso Ramirez might have been affiliated to the Sureños. Not sure if he was a SSL or a South Garden Sureño from Hayward. And basically, the Border Brothers and Sureños were having these funerals in the same area on the same day. They started throwing gang signs at each other. They got into a big brawl. Gunshots were fired. People were beaten. And it carried itself over to the streets. And it would be a day of murder and mayhem in Oakland, within Raza, from the BBs to the Sureños. So at 5:15 on 82nd and Bancroft, a 1992 Lincoln Town car was cruising down Bancroft with suspected Sureño members, I'm assuming, when a car rolled up and shot up the car with an automatic AK-47. And 3 people were killed in that incident. The youngest one was 13 years old, and his name was Hugo Cruz, a 13-year-old kid, man. You know what I mean? Murdered. And Judy Abate, 19 years old, and Nestor Molina, 32, were all killed in that shootout. You know what I mean? And later on that day, on 94th and 8th Street in Border Brother territory, there was a group of BBs having like a shrine for one of, I guess, for the homie that they had the funeral for. And a car rolled up and shot up the place and injured a bunch of people. I don't think no one got killed in that one. But it was a pretty crazy day, man. It was a pretty crazy day, pretty psychotic, man. You know what I mean? Several people were killed, and, it was a no-win for nobody, man, because at the end of the day, it was just Raza killing Raza. And no matter how you look at it or how you paint it, you know what I mean? That's what it is. I know some people are going to be like, oh, but they were Sureños and this and that, but they were Raza at the end of the day, whether you want to accept it or not. So 3 people were killed, 9 were hurt, you know what I mean? And it sparked a whole gang war that spread throughout the city, you know what I mean? Because eventually it became a war between Norte, Sur, and Border Brothers, you know what I mean? And it was just mayhem all the way into about 2010, maybe 2011. There was just murders left and right between these 3 Mexican or Chicano or Raza gangs, you know what I mean? This is one of the reasons why the documentary Gang Wars was made in 2006, I believe. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, that was a crazy day. And I remember, like I said, I used to kick it a lot on East 7th Street at that time. I used to go to sideshows sometimes with my homies still. Once in a while. I wasn't into that as much anymore. And I remember people were nervous. And I remember there was definitely a tension in the air, like something bad was going to happen or something bad could happen. You know what I mean? And I remember a lot of homies around the areas were alert because motherfuckers were getting killed left and right. You know, it was a scary time. It was a crazy time for sure. And, at the end of the day, man, like I said, it was Raza killing Raza. Whether they were Sureños, whether they were Border Brothers, whether they were Norteños, whatever, it was Raza killing Raza. And there's a no-win situation. No one really won this war. You know what I mean? It was just a bunch of young people, youngsters, You know what I mean? Who killed each other for what? You feel me? But, you know, like I always tell people, if you live this lifestyle, there's consequences to this lifestyle. You feel me? But yeah, man, that was an infamous day in Oakland Raza history. You know what I mean? 3 people killed, 9 hurt, and it set off a chain reaction of just murders that continued on, because it didn't stop here. This was just the beginning of it. You know what I mean? And that had already been stemming before that. You know, and you had 3 major gangs fighting for control, at least for Raza control of Oakland. You know, the Norteños and the 30-30s, and then the, you know, the Fruitvale area, the 30s, the Doves, the 40s, even the 50s and 60s. You know what I mean? And you had the Sureños in the 50s. You had the Border Brothers in the Deep. And it was just chaos, man. It was real chaos. I ain't gonna lie to you. There were a few times that I was very nervous hanging around Oakland at that time, man. Because it was bad. It was bad. You know, for sure. But yeah, man, that was my edition of Crime Stories Oakland. And hopefully you like this video. Leave a comment. Tell me if you remember this incident. Tell me what you think. You know what I mean? And I'm going to leave a link to the video that's on YouTube and to the original news reports. These ones right here you see. And yeah, man, that's just town business. That's just Glecha from the town. History of Oakland. And just how crazy and deadly this gang lifestyle was in the past, man. And how it could still be detrimental to our raza even today. But yeah, man, that's all I have to say. This is Jose with Oakland Latinos United.